At 90 years old, Prince Edward, the Duke of Kent, had almost nothing left to prove. He had served the monarchy for more than 8 decades, watched sovereigns come and go, stood through funerals, jubilees, wars, and national ceremonies, and built his reputation on one quality above all others: silence. Yet, according to the dramatic account now circulating, that silence finally ended at the Cenotaph in November 2025, when the longest-serving duke in British history appeared to deliver a message Queen Camilla could not ignore. The moment was brief, but its meaning was presented as unmistakable. The Duke of Kent, frail, newly widowed and supported by Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, stood only about 3 feet from Camilla. He looked in her direction, then turned away, not with hesitation, not as though he had failed to recognize her. The story describes the movement as deliberate, controlled, and final. A man who had spent his life respecting royal rank appeared to deny the Queen even the smallest gesture of acknowledgement. Then he moved toward Catherine, Princess of Wales. He took her hand and held it longer than protocol required. He leaned closer and spoke quietly. Those nearby could not hear every word, but the account claims his meaning became clear afterward. The remaining jewels connected to his mother, Princess Marina, of Greece and Denmark, were to go where he believed they truly belonged. Not to Camilla, not into a private branch of the family where they might disappear. They were to be preserved through Catherine. The woman expected one day to become queen. To understand why the gesture carried such force, the Duke's position must be understood. Prince Edward inherited the title Duke of Kent in 1942, while still a child after the death of his father. By 2025, he had held it for more than 82 years. The story describes him as the longest-serving duke in British history and one of the oldest living members of the royal family. It also stresses his military standing. He and King Charles are presented as the only 2 royals holding the rank of Field Marshal in the British Army. At the center of the dispute were not the crown jewels used at coronations. They were private family jewels connected to the Kent branch and especially to Princess Marina. Marina was born a princess of Greece and Denmark and carried links to several royal houses of Europe. The narrative repeatedly connects her to the Romanov world, a vanished imperial order destroyed in the early 20th century. Her jewelry was presented as more than decoration. Each piece was part of a chain linking Britain to the courts, marriages, wars, and dynasties of Europe. Among the pieces named were the Cambridge sapphire parure, the Kent Pearl Festoon Tiara, diamond girandole earrings, a pearl-fringed tiara, and a remodeled diamond bandeau associated with Queen Mary. The collection had once been larger. Financial pressure forced the Kent family to sell several important pieces, including a sapphire tiara, a necklace, and a stomacher. The buyers were not always publicly confirmed, and some jewels may have left Britain. What remained was therefore not simply valuable. It was the surviving fragment of a collection already reduced by loss. The Cambridge sapphires carried a particularly powerful history. Their line began with Princess Augusta, Duchess of Cambridge in the 19th century. After her death in 1916, the jewels passed through Queen Mary. In 1934, Queen Mary gave them to Princess Marina as a wedding gift. The story presents this as an unbroken tradition of women carrying history forward, one generation placing precious objects into the hands of the next. The name Cambridge added another layer. William and Catherine became the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge when they married in 2011. Although their titles later changed, Cambridge remained the name associated with the beginning of their married royal life. In the Duke of Kent's calculation, passing jewels with that history to Catherine would reconnect title memory and future queenship. The problem was that the Duke's own children were not working royals. His eldest son, George, Earl of St. Andrews, was heir to the dukedom. Lord Nicholas had converted to Catholicism, and Lady Helen Taylor lived largely outside official royal duties. None regularly appeared at state banquets, diplomatic receptions, coronations, or major ceremonies where historic jewelry becomes visible. If the pieces simply passed down the private family line, they might remain locked away for decades. For more than a decade, Catherine had shown that she understood the symbolic power of royal jewelry. When she wore the Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara, the public immediately thought of Diana, When she wore pearl earrings associated with Queen Elizabeth II, the jewels became a visible connection between the late Queen and the new era. Catherine's supporters believed she did not wear these pieces simply to appear glamorous. She used them to continue stories that might otherwise fade. That distinction mattered in the account. Catherine was portrayed as a custodian. Camilla was portrayed as someone who believed the hierarchy of her position entitled her to priority. After Queen Elizabeth died in September 2022, the late Queen's personal jewelry was reviewed and allocated. The story claims Catherine had quietly expressed interest in a diamond brooch that Diana had worn twice. The piece held emotional meaning because of its association with Diana. Another clash reportedly followed in 2023. Catherine's team requested access to a Queen Mary tiara for a state banquet. The request went through official channels, but it was denied because the piece had been assigned to Camilla for another engagement during the same period. The account suggests the timing was not accidental. Whether that conclusion can be proven is another matter. But within the story, it became part of a pattern, Catherine asked. Camilla received priority. Catherine remained silent. The most damaging allegation involved words spoken at a private dinner. According to the account, Camilla dismissed Catherine's use of Diana's jewelry as performance. She allegedly suggested that Catherine was using public grief and Diana's memory. When the words reached William, relations between the households reportedly became colder. His view of Camilla was also shaped by the history of Diana. The Duke had been a senior working royal throughout the 1980s and 1990s. He knew the atmosphere inside the family during the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage. The account claims he understood that Diana was in severe emotional distress and struggling privately, while the institution often treated her as a problem to be managed. The Duke said nothing publicly at the time. That silence reflected the habits of his generation. Royal duty meant protecting the institution, even when private events were painful or morally difficult. Yet the story insists he did not forget what he saw. He remembered Diana's suffering. He remembered the role Camilla played in the marriage crisis. He remembered how quickly the institution expected everyone to continue, as though the damage could be hidden behind ceremony. His anger was also personal because of his own wife, Catherine, Duchess of Kent. Catherine did not fit the image of an emotionally untouched royal woman. During the 1970s, she endured serious mental health difficulties and withdrew from public life for periods of time. She later converted to Catholicism, a deeply personal decision that separated her from traditional expectations surrounding the royal family. The account portrays her as sincere, vulnerable, and deeply affected by the pressures of royal life. It then makes a harsh allegation against Camilla's social circle, claiming Catherine's struggles were mocked in private. Words such as weak, unstable, and embarrassing were allegedly used. The Duke was said to have heard about those comments, and from that point, something in his attitude toward Camilla permanently changed. In 2024, Catherine announced that she was undergoing treatment for cancer after surgery. She withdrew from most public duties while speculation spread across the world. When she returned, she did so carefully. She appeared at Trooping the Colour and later resumed selected engagements. The account presents her return not as performance, but as evidence of resilience. She had faced fear, public pressure, and physical weakness, then returned with greater clarity about her role. The Cenotaph became the place where the decision was made visible. The National Service of Remembrance is one of the most solemn events in the royal calendar. It honors the dead, emphasizes sacrifice, and reminds the monarchy that service is larger than personality. That setting gave the Duke's gesture unusual power. A private inheritance decision was transformed into a public moral statement. Camilla, according to the narrative, did not accept it quietly. On the evening after the ceremony, she reportedly went to Charles with a carefully constructed argument. She did not present the issue as jealousy. She presented it as hierarchy. A senior duke, a field marshal, and a cousin of the late Queen had appeared to endorse Catherine over the sitting Queen. Because the gesture happened at the Cenotaph, it could be interpreted as a public challenge to Camilla's standing. That answer mattered, because the law and the structure of ownership were on the Duke's side. The Kent jewels were not the official crown jewels. They did not automatically belong to the sovereign. They were not institutional property controlled by the royal collection. They were private possessions. The Duke could sell them, give them away, or leave them to anyone through his will. Camilla had no automatic claim. She already possessed the symbols of her own position. She was crowned in May 2023 using a remodeled crown containing Cullinan diamonds. In January 2025, that crown was officially renamed Queen Camilla's crown. Her status was publicly secured. No inheritance from the Duke of Kent was needed to prove that she was queen. Charles also had practical reasons not to challenge him. The Duke was 90 years old. He was newly widowed. His health was declining. He had served the monarchy longer than almost anyone alive. Trying to pressure him could create a scandal far greater than the inheritance itself. More importantly, Charles knew the Duke remembered everything. He remembered the old standards of duty. He remembered Diana. He remembered the years when Charles placed personal desire above royal expectation and the damage that followed. After Charles refused to act, Camilla reportedly left in silence. The story treats that silence as frustration, not surrender. But the central decision remained unchanged. The jewels were the Duke's to give, and his chosen destination was Catherine. The final meaning of the inheritance reached beyond a feud between two women. If Catherine eventually wore the Kent Pearl Festoon Tiara, the diamond girandole earrings, the pearl-fringed tiara, or the remodeled diamond bandeau, those pieces would return to the public stage. They would appear at state banquets, diplomatic receptions, and ceremonies watched around the world. Princess Marina's name would be spoken again. Queen Mary's gift would continue its journey. The Cambridge connection would gain a new chapter. That is why Catherine stood at the center of his final choice. She was not selected only because she would one day become queen. She was selected because she had repeatedly shown an ability to make historic objects feel emotionally present. Diana's tiaras did not look like museum pieces on her. Queen Elizabeth's pearls did not feel frozen in the past. Catherine wore them as bridges between reigns. The account closes with an image of the Duke writing the final page of his own story. After more than 82 years as Duke of Kent, nearly 9 decades of royal life, and 30 years of silence about the deepest wounds inside the family, he chose one last act of control. He could not rewrite Diana's history. He could not erase the pain endured by his wife. He could not recover every jewel the Kent family had been forced to sell. But he could decide what happened to the pieces still in his hands. His answer was Catherine. Not because Camilla lacked a crown, not because Catherine needed more diamonds, but because inheritance, in his view, was about trust. The jewels had survived royal deaths, financial pressure, 2 world wars, family divisions, and the collapse of empires. They deserved to remain visible. They deserved to be worn by someone who understood that every stone carried a name, every tiara carried a memory, and every public appearance could keep a vanished woman present for one more generation. At the Cenotaph in November 2025, the Duke of Kent was physically weak, but the message attributed to him was strong. He turned away from Camilla. He reached for Catherine, and with one quiet decision, he placed Princess Marina's legacy not in the hands of the present queen, but in the future of the monarchy. The jewels, he believed, were going where they belonged.